Hi, I'm John Olson with Wood Magazine. In our latest edition, 210, we have an article on restoring a hand plane. So I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about once you have an old hand plane that you've restored, cleaned up, how to put it back together and fit it for optimum performance. We have some parts set out on the table, and I just want to go through the parts to tell you what they do, how they interact together, and how everything fits together into a tool that hopefully will cut some wood. On the left is a blade. For this model plane, this is actually a replacement blade. That is one great way of souping up the performance of a hand plane. It's just like switching out the factory table saw blade that came with whatever model you got. Next to that is the chip breaker. Some people will call this the cap iron. Early on, this was referred to as a double iron, and this actually gets bolted to the blade to not only break chips, but also to provide a means to adjust your blade once it's inside the plane. This is your lever cap. This goes on top of the chip breaker blade assembly to hold everything down to the frog. The frog is kind of the guts of a plane. It is what holds the blade in place, what provides adjustments to your blade. It's held in the body on this model by means of 2 screws. So this will actually fit inside the body, and a couple of machine screws will go inside these slots. The slots are to give adjustability, not only front and back, but slight lateral adjustability in case something's a little bit twisted. This particular model doesn't have a frog adjustment screws. On some planes, there may be a little machine screw that goes in the back of the frog that meets in a little yoke to actually give a little bit more adjustability to your planes. This one is an earlier model, so it doesn't have it. This does have a lateral adjuster. When the blade sits on top of the frog, the slot in the blade fits across this lateral adjuster, which will let me tip the blade corner to corner to get a nice even cut to keep a corner from digging in. Some earlier model planes actually didn't have a lateral adjuster. Stanley was making planes for about 25-30 years before they added this feature. So if yours doesn't have this, it's actually okay. You can do it manually, but it is a nice feature to have. The frog also has a yoke that adjusts vertical adjustment of your plane. And this little post actually engages your a slot in your chip breaker. So this little post will sit right inside this slot, and this is what adjusts the blade in and out. So once you have everything assembled, it kind of has to work in unison to get a clean shaving, to get everything bedded down properly so that you will get good results. The first thing I do when reassembling a hand plane is put on the knob and the tote. Once you get the frog in place, things get in the way of your screws, so now's the best time to get those on, get everything lined up, and get ready to put the working pieces in. This particular one beds along these 2 machine surfaces, but it also beds along this foot right at the back of the mouth of the plane. So I want to make sure to get the best results that I have a rock solid foundation to attach the blade to. The first step I'll want to do to install the frog is loosely put in the machine screws. And tighten them down so you still have a little bit of adjustability in not only sliding the frog front and back, but also side to side. Typically what I like to do is start out by lining up the frog with the very edge of this little ridge at the back of the mouth. So what I'll do is get it close and then judge with a small ruler how that gap is. Of course, the blade never really touches the bottom of the plane. It's just a good starting point because it gives me something to actually reference off of if I need to move the frog back or bring it up for a tighter mouth. Now I can assemble the blade and chip breaker. For a gap or a reveal, I like to leave anywhere from a 32nd to a 1/16 of an inch. If I'm taking a thicker shaving, you have to back it up even a little bit more. But for most general work, you can have it kind of set at that nice in-between and then lock it in place. Now it's time to install the blade chip breaker assembly in the plane. And at this point, I just want to make sure that the blade isn't really sticking out the bottom or that it isn't really far back in the body. I can use my vertical adjuster to kind of set it in place. And what I want to do here is set my lever cap so it'll hold everything to the frog in tension, but not be so tight that I can't make adjustments. So initially when I pull the lever a few times, I'm feeling how much tension there is on that whole assembly. If I tighten the screw a little bit, it gets harder and harder to tension, and it also makes it harder and harder to make adjustments. So what I'm after is that happy medium where it's holding it tight enough that everything wants to stay in place, but it's also loose enough that I can make easy adjustments without really stressing everything. And I think I've loosened it a little bit more than I'd like. Now that I have the blade locked in place and my tension feels good, I have to set the blade for the thickness of shavings I want to take. When I do this, my training is to actually sight down the edge of the plane and just visually see how much blade is sticking out where. A good tip on this, if you're having trouble sighting down, is to get a white piece of paper, something light in color. It can even be a lighter colored piece of wood. Put it behind the blade and it's a lot easier to sight down the sole of the plane. I want this blade to be pushed forward in tension by the vertical adjuster. So when I'm making adjustments, I always want that to be pushing forward on the blade. Bring the blade back a little bit. Right now I've adjusted it too far forward and I have a little bit of backlash. So I have a few turns in this when it's not doing anything. And now I feel the tension picking up, so when I'm reversing, I'm bringing the blade back. Now it's starting to grab. I'm going to push it forward until I have the amount of blade I want sticking out. Advance that forward now that's under tension, and I feel really good about the blade having even amounts sticking out corner to corner. I'm not trying to take too great of a shaving. The mouth looks good, and I'm ready for a test cut. The first thing I want to see is if it'll actually shave wood, and it does. So we're good in that aspect. It's not clogging or it's not choking up inside the plane. The shavings are ejecting, so that's good. I'm also feeling what the plane is doing as I'm shaving, and I want to feel if there's any vibrations in the plane or if I feel anything wobbling around. A lot of times on an ill-fitting frog, when you take a shaving, if it's not bedded right, it'll actually flex a little bit, and you can somewhat feel that. It's almost like a little bit of a shimmy in the plane. You can also tell how you're doing based on how the the shavings are coming out. If the chip breaker is too far forward, a lot of times they'll come out in almost like accordion peels instead of cleanly. Sometimes if it depends on the wood, but if your chip breaker is too far back, it won't curl them up, they'll just come out straight. So this plane feels really good. It just has that good feel of a nice solid blade connection. I'm not having to really push hard to get a shaving, and it's leaving a nice surface. Kind of a final test I like to do to see really the performance, what the performance of a bench plane is like, is to surface the face of a board. When it comes time to take a full width shaving down a board where you have grain reversing, then you start seeing problems show up. So let's take a few shavings and see how we do. So far so good. The shavings are popping right out. I'm not getting any shavings clogging in the throat of the plane. I'm not getting little accordion peels where the one shaving is forcing the next shaving out. The plane isn't bouncing down the board as I cut, so that's really good. This feels really good. So that means our adjustments are good. We have a good mouth opening. We have the chip breaker set correctly. We have the blade set at a really nice depth. Sometimes you'll feel things either on the entrance or the end of the cut, and that looks really good. So overall, I'm happy with the performance of this guy.